What happens when a wolf is born under a blood moon and marked as cursed before she can even speak? For Mira Ashwood, life in the Iron Peak Pack meant 23 years of isolation and fear. She was the cursed one, the Omega whose very existence brought misfortune to those around her, or so they said. Born during a lunar eclipse with strange silver marks on her skin, she'd been blamed for every drought, every failed hunt, every piece of bad luck that befell the pack. They kept her in the servants' quarters, made her work from dawn until midnight, and whispered that even looking at her could bring ill fate. Her scent, lavender and morning dew and wildflowers, was the only soft thing about her brutal existence. But when Alpha Drake Thornfield publicly rejected her as his fated mate during the winter solstice ceremony, declaring that he'd rather die than bind himself to a curse, everything changes. The rejection doesn't just break her heart, it breaks something far more ancient, something that had been locked away inside her since birth. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. Not Drake, not the Iron Peak Pack, not even the moon goddess herself. Because Mira wasn't cursed at all, she was chosen, and the marks on her skin weren't signs of misfortune, they were seals. Seals that had been holding back a power so vast, so ancient, so absolutely terrifying that when they finally shattered, the entire supernatural world would feel it. The winter solstice ceremony was the most important event in the Iron Peak Pack's calendar. It marked the longest night of the year, when the moon goddess's power was at its peak and mate bonds were most likely to form. The ceremony grounds had been decorated with evergreen boughs and white candles, and every wolf in the territory, over 400 strong, gathered in their finest clothing to celebrate. Mira stood at the very back of the gathering, as she always did. Her worn gray dress marked her as Omega, and the silver marks that spiraled across her left arm and shoulder ensured that no one stood too close. They looked like ancient runes, and they'd been there since birth, glowing faintly whenever she was emotional. The pack believed they were cursed marks, proof that the moon goddess had forsaken her. Mira had learned not to argue, learned not to defend herself, learned to make herself as small and quiet and invisible as possible, because whenever she drew attention, bad things happened to those around her. Or at least, that's what they claimed. A child had fallen from a tree the day after Mira accidentally bumped into his mother. A beta's house had caught fire the week after he'd yelled at her for dropping a tray. The pack's best hunter had broken his leg the morning after scolding her for being too slow. Coincidence, perhaps. But the pack saw patterns where none existed, and Mira had become their scapegoat for every misfortune. Tonight, though, Mira had a different worry. Tonight, Alpha Drake Thornfield was supposed to announce his chosen mate, likely Cassandra Nightshade, the beautiful beta female who'd been pursuing him for months. The scent of cinnamon and iron that always clung to Cassandra made Mira's nose wrinkle, but everyone else seemed to find it appealing. Drake stood on the raised platform at the center of the ceremony grounds, and even Mira had to admit he was impressive. Tall and muscular, with dark hair and eyes the color of steel, he radiated alpha authority. His scent, forest and embers and ozone and steel, commanded attention from every wolf present. At 29, he'd been alpha for 5 years and had transformed Iron Peak from a struggling pack into one of the most powerful in the Northern Territories. The moon reached its apex, and Mira felt it, a pull she couldn't name, a tug behind her ribs that made her gasp. Around her, other unmated wolves shifted excitedly, but none of them seemed to feel what she felt. This wasn't hope or anticipation. This was recognition. No, it couldn't be. The moon goddess wouldn't be so cruel. But the pull grew stronger, and Drake's head snapped toward her with predatory precision. His eyes flashed gold, the sign of a mate bond forming, and the entire pack fell into stunned silence. The scent of forest and embers wrapped around Mira like invisible chains, and she felt her wolf, the wolf that had never once made itself known in 23 years, suddenly stir. Just a whisper, just a breath, but it was there. "Come forward," Drake commanded, his voice sharp with barely contained fury. Mira's legs refused to move. This was a nightmare. This couldn't be happening. She was cursed. She was broken. I said come forward. The alpha command cracked through the air like a whip, and Mira's body obeyed before her mind could catch up. She stumbled through the crowd as wolves scrambled to get out of her way, their faces twisted with disgust and horror. She climbed the platform steps, her hands shaking so badly she had to grip the railing to keep from falling. Drake's scent overwhelmed her senses, and the mate bond pulled taut between them like a rope ready to snap. "Mira Ashwood," Drake said, and his voice dripped with contempt. "The cursed Omega, the bringer of misfortune, the wolf who can't even shift." He turned to address the pack, his expression one of absolute revulsion. "The moon goddess has made an error, or perhaps this is a test, to see if I'm strong enough to reject what should never have been offered." The bond pulsed between them, still forming, still reaching. Mira's wolf pushed against barriers she'd never known existed, trying to answer the call. The silver marks on her arm began to glow brighter. "I am Alpha Drake Thornfield, leader of the Iron Peak Pack and future Alpha King of the Northern Territories," Drake continued, his voice ringing with authority. "I will unite the packs under my banner. I will bring order to chaos. I will be remembered as the greatest leader our kind has ever known." He turned his steel-gray eyes on Mira, and the hatred there made her want to disappear. "And I will not be tied to a curse. I will not risk my destiny for an Omega who brings nothing but ruin." Time stopped. "I, Drake Thornfield, Alpha of the Iron Peak Pack, reject you, Mira Ashwood, as my mate. I sever this bond by my own will and authority. You are not worthy of standing at my side. You are not worthy of my protection. You are not worthy of the air you breathe. You are cursed, and I will not let your misfortune taint my legacy." The pain was unlike anything Mira had ever experienced. The bond that had barely begun to form shattered like glass, and each fragment tore through her chest as it broke. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the agony of rejection as it burned through every nerve ending. She collapsed to her knees, a scream locked in her throat. The silver marks on her arm flared bright enough to illuminate the entire ceremony grounds, and wolves shielded their eyes. "Remove her," Drake ordered coldly. "Take her beyond pack borders and leave her. The curse ends tonight." Two guards stepped forward, both betas, both looking vaguely uncomfortable but unwilling to disobey their alpha. They hauled Mira to her feet, and she hung between them like a rag doll. The pain made it impossible to stand, impossible to protest, impossible to do anything but endure. As they dragged her toward the edge of the ceremony grounds, Mira caught sight of her parents. Her father, an Omega who worked in the pack's kitchens. Her mother, a low-ranked beta who'd given up trying to defend her daughter years ago. They stood together near the refreshment tables, and Mira's eyes met her mother's for just a heartbeat. Her mother turned away. The guards took her to the northern border, where packlands ended and wilderness began. Beyond lay the Frostwood, a forest so dense and cold that even experienced hunters rarely ventured deep. In winter, it was a death sentence. "I'm sorry," one guard muttered as they released her at the boundary stones. "Alpha's orders." They left. Mira lay on the frozen ground as the pain slowly ebbed from unbearable to merely devastating. The silver marks on her arm had stopped glowing, but they felt different now, warmer, almost alive. Behind her she could hear the winter solstice ceremony resuming. Music and laughter drifted on the wind. They had already forgotten her. Mira forced herself to stand on trembling legs. The pain in her chest throbbed with each heartbeat, but she was alive. She'd survived the rejection, and now she had to survive the wilderness. She turned north and walked into the Frostwood. The temperature plummeted within the first hour. What had been merely cold became brutally frigid as Mira stumbled deeper into the forest. Her thin dress provided no protection, and she had no cloak, no supplies, no way to make fire. The full moon provided some light through the canopy, but it only made the shadows darker, more menacing. Mira's teeth chattered so hard she tasted copper where she'd bitten her tongue. Her hands and feet had long since gone numb. The silver marks on her arms seemed to pulse with a heat of their own, the only warm spot on her entire body. She needed shelter, needed to get out of the wind that cut through the trees like knives. But the Frostwood was ancient and wild, and it didn't offer sanctuary easily. Mira walked for what felt like hours, her body operating on pure survival instinct while her mind drifted in and out of awareness. The pain from the severed bond merged with the pain of freezing, and she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. "This is it," she thought distantly. "This is how I die. Rejected and alone, and the pack will probably celebrate that the curse finally left them. The cave appeared like a miracle, just a dark opening in a hillside, barely large enough for her to crawl inside, but it was out of the wind. Mira dragged herself through the entrance and collapsed on the stone floor. It wasn't much warmer inside, but at least she was no longer exposed to the elements. Mira curled into the tightest ball she could manage, trying to conserve what little body heat remained. Her vision blurred at the edges. Her heartbeat slowed. The silver marks on her arm flared suddenly, bright enough to illuminate the cave, and Mira felt something inside her crack, not painfully, but like ice breaking in spring. Inevitable, natural, right? "Hold on," a voice whispered, and Mira wasn't sure if it was her imagination or her wolf finally speaking. Just hold on a little longer. But holding on hurt. Staying conscious hurt. Everything hurt. Mira let her eyes drift closed. She didn't hear the wolves approaching, didn't sense the massive forms that converged on the cave entrance, drawn by something older than instinct. Didn't see the eyes that glowed not gold like normal wolves, but amber bright like captured sunlight. She simply drifted away, her breathing shallow, her body surrendering to the cold and the certainty that she'd die here alone, unmourned and unclaimed. Warmth. That was the first thing Mira became aware of, warmth seeping into her frozen limbs like liquid gold. She couldn't move, couldn't open her eyes, could barely think, but she could feel. Bodies. Massive, warm bodies pressed against her from all sides, fur so soft it felt like silk against her skin. Breath on her face, steady, rhythmic, carrying the scent of aged oak and winter snow and pine and storm. Mira's mind slowly crawled back toward consciousness. She tried to count the presences surrounding her. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 wolves surrounded her, their bodies creating a living cocoon that was slowly bringing her back from the edge of death. They'd saved her. These unknown wolves had found her and were protecting her. But why? Time passed. She couldn't tell how long. Minutes or hours blurred together as the warmth continued to seep in, chasing away the deadly cold. Her fingers began to tingle as circulation returned. Her toes sent sharp pains shooting up her legs. Her lungs expanded more fully with each breath. She was going to live. One of the wolves shifted position, and Mira managed to crack her eyes open. The cave was no longer dark. Golden light seemed to emanate from the wolves themselves, soft and warm. They were enormous, easily 3 times the size of normal pack wolves. Their fur ranged from silver to gold to deep amber, and their eyes, they glowed. Not the gold of alpha wolves or the normal yellow of regular wolves, but amber bright, like trapped sunlight. The largest wolf, the one whose massive head rested near hers, met her gaze. Those amber eyes held intelligence, recognition, and something that looked almost like reverence. "You're safe," a voice said, and Mira's eyes snapped to the cave entrance. A man stood silhouetted against the slowly lightening sky. Dawn was coming. She'd survived the night. He stepped inside, and Mira's breath caught despite her exhausted state. He was tall, taller than Drake, with broad shoulders and a warrior's build. Scars marked his face, arms, and chest, each one telling a story of battles survived. His hair was dark, with threads of silver at the temples, and his eyes were that same amber-bright color as the wolves. He moved with the controlled power of a predator who had nothing to prove, and his scent, aged oak and winter snow and pine and storm, made Mira's barely awakened wolf press forward with interest. "My name is Kalen," he said, his voice deep and resonant like distant thunder. He knelt a few feet away, careful not to crowd her. "Kalen Ironheart, I lead these wolves." He gestured to the 10 massive forms surrounding her. "We are the Unchained, and we serve the Blessed One, the one foretold, the one who will rise when the winter moon darkens and bring light to our kind." His amber eyes held hers with an intensity that made her shiver for reasons that had nothing to do with cold. "You, Mira Ashwood, are she." "I'm cursed," Mira whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm broken. I bring misfortune to everyone around me." "You are no curse." One of the other wolves shifted, a woman with long silver hair and amber eyes that glowed with barely contained power. Her scent was steel and honey. Your power was bound the day you were born. The marks on your arm aren't signs of misfortune, they're seals, magical bindings placed on you to suppress what you truly are. What I... Mira's mind struggled to process the words. What I truly am. Kalen stood and began to pace, his movements restless. Tell me, Mira, have you never wondered why terrible things seem to happen around you? Why accidents befell those who mistreated you? She had. Of course she had. But she'd always assumed it was the curse, that her very presence brought bad luck. It wasn't random, Kalen continued, his voice hard with suppressed anger. Those weren't accidents or coincidences. Your power was leaking through the seals, protecting you the only way it could, by causing small misfortunes to those who meant you harm. But because the bindings were in place, you couldn't control it, couldn't direct it. It just happened. My parents, the silver-haired woman said, stepping forward in her human form now. I'm Sarah, by the way, second of the Unchained. Your parents bound your power when you were 3 days old using magic they barely understood. They did it because you were born during a blood moon eclipse, a sign of immense power. Your wolf manifested immediately. Your eyes glowed amber. The silver marks appeared on your skin, and every wolf in the territory felt your presence like a physical weight. Mira shook her head weakly. That can't be true. I can't even shift. I'm the weakest. You couldn't shift because your wolf was locked away, Kalen interrupted, crouching before her again. But the binding required maintenance. Regular rituals to keep the seals strong. Your parents performed them in secret for 23 years, convincing themselves they were protecting you, protecting the pack from your power. But when the mate bond formed between you and that fool Alpha, Sarah said, her voice sharp with contempt, and he rejected you, the backlash of that severed bond created a shock of power. It cracked the seals. Can't you feel it? Your wolf is waking, Mira. She's been waiting for you. Mira closed her eyes and reached inward, deeper than she'd ever dared before. And there, beneath the pain and fear and exhaustion, she felt it. A presence, vast and ancient and absolutely furious. Hello, little heart, a voice said, resonating through Mira's entire being. I've waited so long to speak with you. She's there, Mira breathed, eyes flying open. My wolf, she's actually there. The Unchained reacted instantly. 10 pairs of amber eyes glowing brighter, 10 massive wolves lowering their heads in respect. Even Kalen bowed slightly, and when he spoke, his voice carried weight. Then the prophecy begins to fulfill itself. He straightened and held out his hand to Mira. Will you let us help you? Teach you? Show you what you were always meant to be? Mira stared at his offered hand. Everything she'd believed about herself was a lie. Her parents had betrayed her. The pack had made her a scapegoat. She'd nearly died in the frozen woods, but she hadn't died. She'd survived. And these wolves, these impossible, powerful wolves, were offering her something she'd never had before, a choice. Take his hand, her wolf urged, stronger now, more present. Trust him, trust them. They are ours, and we are theirs. Mira reached out and placed her hand in Kalen's. His grip was warm, strong, steady. He pulled her to her feet with effortless care, and she stood on shaking legs, surrounded by the Unchained. Good, Kalen said, and something like pride flickered across his scarred face. Now let's get you somewhere warm and fed. Your body needs to heal before your wolf can fully wake. We have much to show you, Blessed One. Please, Mira said quietly. Mira, I'm not blessed. I'm just... You are Mira, Kalen agreed, his amber eyes kind. But you're also so much more than you've been allowed to believe. Come, let us show you. The sanctuary existed in a place between places, hidden by ancient magic in the heart of the Frostwood, where no pack had claimed territory in over 1,000 years. The trees here grew taller and older, their branches forming a canopy so thick that only dappled sunlight reached the forest floor. The air itself felt different, charged with power, alive with possibility. At the center of a massive clearing stood a compound of buildings grown from living wood, not constructed, but cultivated, their walls and roofs formed from branches woven so tightly they were stronger than stone. Amber light flickered in windows, carved from knotted trunks, and the scent of pine and magic hung heavy in the air. This is Heartwood Haven, Kalen explained as they approached. Built by the first Blessed One over 1,000 years ago, it's been waiting for you ever since. They passed through gates that opened at Kalen's approach, and Mira felt the magic recognize something in her, a resonance that made the silver marks on her arm pulse warmly. Inside, the compound was beautiful in its simplicity. Everything served a purpose, and nothing was wasted. "Rest first," Kalen said gently, leading her to a building near the center of the compound. "Then we'll explain everything. The prophecy, your power, what comes next." A room had been prepared for her. The first time in her life she'd had her own space. A large bed piled with furs dominated one wall, and a fireplace crackled with welcoming warmth. Windows overlooked the forest, and a basin of clean water sat ready for washing. Mira stood in the center of the room and felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Kalen nodded and turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Mira, that alpha who rejected you, he made a mistake. He didn't just push away his fated mate. He set free the one being who could show him that true power doesn't come from domination or control." His scarred face broke into a fierce smile. "And when you're ready, you're going to show him, show all of them, exactly what they threw away." The days that followed were a blur of revelation and healing. Mira learned that the Unchained weren't normal wolves. They were guardians, an ancient breed blessed by the moon goddess herself to protect the blessed ones who appeared once every millennium. Each was over 300 years old, sustained by their oath and the magic of Heartwood Haven. "The prophecy speaks of cycles," Kalen explained one evening as they sat in the compound's library. Shelves carved from living wood held texts so old they were written on parchment that felt like silk. "Once every 1,000 years, when darkness threatens to consume the light of our kind, the Blessed One is born. She rises during a time of crisis, awakened by betrayal and rejection, marked by signs in the sky." "A blood moon eclipse," Mira said, running her fingers over an illuminated manuscript that showed a wolf with amber eyes and silver marks glowing on its fur. "Exactly. You're the third in recorded history." Kalen pointed to different texts. "The first blessed one stopped the Alpha King who tried to enslave all wolves and separate them from the goddess's grace. The second prevented a war between our kind and an ancient darkness that rose from the earth itself." He looked at Mira intently. "And now you, the third. Born as Drake Thornfield prepares to unite all packs under his rule, not through cooperation, but through fear and conquest." "But I'm not strong enough to stop an Alpha King," Mira protested. "I can barely even feel my wolf, let alone—" "Your wolf is still waking," Sarah interrupted, joining them with a tray of food. "The seals were in place for over 2 decades. It will take time for her to fully surface, but she's there, growing stronger every day." Mira's wolf stirred at the words, and she felt it more clearly now, felt her more clearly. The wolf's presence was becoming more solid, more real, with each passing day. "Tell me about the prophecy," Mira said, turning to a page covered in elegant script. To her surprise, she could read the ancient language. Words that should have been incomprehensible flowed easily in her mind. Kalen's voice took on a rhythmic quality as he recited from memory. "When winter's moon is swallowed by blood's shadow, when the blessed child bears marks of ancient power, the light-bearer will rise from rejection's ashes. She will be mercy and justice, gentle and fierce. She will be the heart that sees all hearts. She will come when darkness masquerades as strength, when cruelty hides behind the mask of order, when fear of power drowns the voice of love. And she will remind us what it means to be whole, as she has done before, as she will do again, until the final darkness is vanquished." The words resonated through Mira's bones, and her wolf rose up, pressing against her skin. "Yes, this is who we are. This is who we've always been meant to be." "I'm still scared," Mira admitted quietly. "What if I fail? What if I'm not—" "The prophecy didn't choose wrong," a new voice said. Mira turned to see a young man with warm brown eyes and an easy smile standing in the doorway. "I'm Finn, by the way. Youngest of the Unchained, only 250 years old. His scent was cedar and rain. And you're going to be amazing. We can all feel it." Over the following days, Mira met each member of the Unchained. Kalen Ironheart, the leader. ancient and scarred with the scent of aged oak and winter snow, a warrior who'd seen empires rise and fall. Sarah Moonwhisper. Second in command, steel and honey, fierce in battle and gentle in healing. Ronan Stormcaller, the strategist. Smoke and Earth, always planning 3 moves ahead. Thalia Brightwood, the tracker. Wild Rose and Morning Mist, who could follow a scent across water. Marcus Ashenblade, the weapons master. Iron and oak, patient and precise. Lyric Starweaver, the bard and historian. Honey and Starlight, who kept all their stories alive. Brennan Nightshade, the scout. Shadows and Moss, silent as death and twice as patient. Corin Frostfang, the defender. Stone and Ice, immovable when protecting others. Zara Windwhisper, the empath. Lavender and Sage, who could read emotions like open books. Finn Goldenheart, the youngest. Cedar and Rain, with a laugh that could lighten any mood. They became her family in ways the Iron Peak Pack had never been. They trained her gently, taught her patiently, and slowly, carefully, helped her understand that she wasn't cursed. She was blessed. But the real transformation came on the first full moon after her rescue. The moon rose full and bright over Heartwood Haven, and Mira felt the call in her very soul. Her wolf surged forward, stronger than ever before, demanding release. "It's time," her wolf said, and the voice was clear and strong and absolutely certain. "Let me show you who we truly are." The Unchained gathered in the central clearing, forming a protective circle. Kalen stood closest, his expression both proud and watchful. "Remember what we taught you," he said softly. "Don't fight the shift. Let it flow. Let your wolf guide you." Mira nodded, her heart racing. She'd never shifted, had never felt this imperative before, but now it was undeniable, a need as fundamental as breathing. She closed her eyes and reached for that presence inside her. "I'm ready," she told her wolf. "Show me." The shift began, and it was nothing like the painful transformations she'd heard described. Her bones didn't snap, they flowed, reorganizing themselves with the fluid grace of water, finding a new course. Fur emerged across her skin, soft and white as fresh snow, each strand seeming to catch and hold moonlight. Power built inside her with each second of transformation, not the harsh, dominating power of an alpha, but something warmer, something that sang of love and protection and the fierce determination to shield the vulnerable. Mira's body grew larger, and larger, and larger. When the transformation completed, she stood on 4 legs and opened eyes that now glowed amber bright. The world exploded into clarity, scents and sounds beyond anything she'd ever imagined, and she was massive. Even Kalen in his guardian form only came up to her shoulder. She was easily the size of a horse, her body rippling with power that made the very air shimmer. The silver marks that had been on her arm now covered her white fur in intricate patterns that glowed with inner light. The Unchained dropped to their bellies instantly, heads bowed in reverence. Even Kalen, ancient powerful Kalen, lowered himself in submission. "She is the Blessed One," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The Light-Bearer has awakened, the prophecy is fulfilled." Mira lifted her massive head and howled. The sound shook Heartwood Haven, shook the Frostwood, carried for miles in every direction, a declaration, a promise, a reminder that light existed even in the deepest darkness. Every wolf in the Northern Territories would have heard it. Every wolf would know that something fundamental had changed, that the balance was shifting, that the Blessed One had risen. And in the Iron Peak Pack, Alpha Drake Thornfield bolted upright in his bed, his heart hammering against his ribs. He'd heard that howl, felt it resonate through every cell of his body, recognized something in it that his wolf responded to with instinctive submission. His rejected mate was alive, and she was so much more powerful than he'd ever imagined. The weeks following Mira's first shift were transformative. She learned to move between forms with increasing ease, though she preferred her wolf form. It felt more natural, more true. In wolf form, the silver marks glowed constantly, and she discovered they weren't just decorative. They were channels for power, conduits that let her tap into the magic the moon goddess had blessed her with. "Empathy," Zara explained during a training session. "You can feel what others feel, not just emotions, but pain, fear, joy, hope. She demonstrated by projecting different feelings, and Mira picked up on each one instantly, her silver marks glowing brighter with each connection. The Blessed One is meant to understand. You can't heal what you don't recognize. And heal she could. When Brennan returned from a scouting mission with a deep gash across his ribs, Mira placed her paw over the wound and felt power flow from her. The injury closed, leaving only a thin scar. The Lightbearer brings healing wherever she walks, Lyric said, recording the event in her chronicles. Physical wounds, emotional trauma, spiritual damage, all can be mended by her touch. Mira also discovered she had command, though it was different from an alpha's dominance. When she spoke with the force of her will behind it, wolves didn't just obey. They wanted to obey, because her command carried no malice, no desire to subjugate. It was gentle but absolute, a reminder rather than a threat. Use it carefully, Kaelin warned. The Blessed One's power is meant to guide, not control. Command when necessary, but never to impose your will for your own benefit. Days turned to weeks, and Mira grew from the broken, frightened Omega into something else entirely. She walked with confidence now, spoke with gentle authority, trained with the Unchained, and held her own against warriors who'd fought for centuries. She was becoming who she'd always been meant to be, but she also knew the outside world wouldn't ignore her forever. Eventually, Drake would come. Eventually, the Iron Peak Pack would seek her out. Eventually, she'd have to face her past. That day came sooner than she expected. Brennan burst into the training grounds where Mira was sparring with Marcus, his scent sharp with alarm. "We have company. A scout from Iron Peak has found the Haven." Mira's heart kicked into overdrive. "How many?" "Just one so far, but she's already heading back to report. They'll know you're here within hours." Brennan's amber eyes were troubled. "What are your orders?" The old Mira would have panicked, would have wanted to hide, to run, to disappear, but she wasn't that Mira anymore. "Let them come," she said, her voice steady and sure. "It's time they learned what they rejected." Kaelin appeared at her side, already in tactical mode. "Mira, if Drake brings the full pack, that's over 400 wolves. Even with the Unchained, then let him bring 400, Mira interrupted. Her wolf rose up, ready and unafraid. "Let him bring an army. Let him see exactly what he threw away when he chose his ambition over the moon goddess's will." "Yes," her wolf purred. "Let them come. Let them see. Let them understand their mistake." The Unchained mobilized instantly. Positions were assigned. Defenses were checked. Heartwood Haven had stood for over 1,000 years, and its magical protections were formidable, but they prepared for the worst. "There's something else," Zara said quietly, pulling Mira aside. The empath's eyes were distant, seeing something beyond the present. "A woman will attack first, beautiful and cruel. She wanted the position you rejected, and she will learn that ambition without compassion leads only to ruin." "Good," Mira said. She was done being afraid, done being small, done letting others define her worth. She was the Blessed One, and it was time the Iron Peak Pack understood what that meant. They arrived 2 days later, and Mira smelled them long before they came into view. Over 300 distinct scent signatures, led by the unmistakable Forest and Embers presence of Drake Thornfield himself. Mira stood in the central clearing of Heartwood Haven, flanked by the Unchained in their human forms. She wore simple clothing, fitted leather pants and a flowing white shirt that complemented the silver marks visible on her left arm. Her hair, once always bound and hidden, fell loose around her shoulders. Power radiated from her naturally, the air shimmered with barely contained energy. The Iron Peak wolves emerged from the tree line in tight formation. They were impressive. Alphas and betas, warriors chosen for strength and loyalty. At their head walked Drake, and beside him, Mira's eyes narrowed. Beside him walked Cassandra Nightshade, the beta female who'd always looked at Mira with such contempt. She wore Drake's scent like a claiming, and Mira understood. He'd chosen a new mate already. "Do you feel anything?" her wolf asked curiously. "Nothing," Mira replied. Honestly, that bond was dead, and she felt only relief. The Iron Peak wolves stopped at the Haven's boundary, the magical wards that prevented entry without permission. Drake stepped forward, his expression carefully neutral, but his scent betrayed his shock. He stared at Mira like he'd never seen her before, because he hadn't. Not really. Mira Ashwood, Drake said, his voice carrying alpha authority, you are still subject to pack law. I order you to return to Iron Peak territory and— No, Mira said simply, her voice calm and clear. Drake's eyes flashed gold. You dare refuse an alpha's direct command? You rejected me, Mira replied evenly. You cast me out to die. You severed our bond and exiled me from your pack. I am no longer subject to your authority or your laws. Cassandra stepped forward, her scent turning sharp with cinnamon and iron, the dangerous smell of a wolf ready to attack. You're nothing but a rogue now, a stray that needs to be eliminated before you spread your curse to other packs. Is that what you think I am? Mira asked, tilting her head slightly. A rogue? I think you're a cursed Omega who got lucky, Cassandra sneered. But your luck's run out. You're going to— She shifted mid-sentence, her body flowing into a large, rust-colored wolf with amber eyes. It was a clear challenge, an attack meant to put the cursed Omega in her place once and for all. Cassandra lunged forward, claws extended, teeth bared. Mira didn't move. Kalen stepped forward, and his shift was instantaneous. One moment human, the next, a massive guardian wolf. Amber eyes glowing, easily twice Cassandra's size. Cassandra stopped mid-leap, her eyes widening in shock and fear. Kalen simply stood there, a living wall between her and Mira, radiating ancient power. No, Mira said softly, placing a hand on Kalen's massive shoulder. She challenged me. I'll answer. Mira, Kalen began, but she shook her head. Trust me. She stepped around him and walked toward where Cassandra stood, frozen. Behind the rust-colored wolf, the Iron Peak pack watched in confusion and growing alarm as the other 9 Unchained revealed themselves, stepping from positions around the clearing. 10 guardian wolves, each one massive, powerful, ancient. But Mira's attention remained on Cassandra. She stopped a few feet away and let her shift begin. She wanted Cassandra to see, wanted Drake to see, wanted every wolf present to witness what they'd called cursed. The shift flowed through her like liquid moonlight. Her bones reorganized with fluid grace. White fur covered her body, each strand glowing softly. The silver marks spread across her pelt in intricate patterns that pulsed with power. And she grew, and grew, and grew. When the transformation completed, she towered over Cassandra like a mountain over a hill. The rust-colored wolf barely came up to her chest. Mira's paws were the size of Cassandra's head. Her amber eyes blazed with light that made every wolf present lower their heads instinctively. The silver marks on her fur glowed like captured starlight, and the scent of lavender and morning dew and wildflowers filled the clearing. But underneath it now was something else. Power. Ancient, blessed, undeniable power. Submit, Mira's wolf commanded, and the word resonated with the authority of the moon goddess herself. Cassandra's legs folded without her consent. She dropped to her belly, head pressed to the ground, whimpering in absolute submission. The Blessed One's command was irresistible. Mira looked past Cassandra to where Drake stood in human form, his face pale with shock and dawning understanding. Their eyes met, and she saw the exact moment he comprehended what, exactly who, he'd rejected. The Unchained shifted as one, revealing their true forms, 10 guardian wolves creating a perfect circle around Mira, like ancient protectors surrounding their chosen queen. Each was massive, but even they seemed small compared to the white wolf that radiated blessed light. I am Mira Ashwood, Mira said, her voice carrying in both human speech and wolf song, audible to every being present. I am the third blessed one, returned as the prophecy foretold. I am the light bearer. I am the heart that sees all hearts. I am the voice of the moon goddess made manifest in flesh and fur. She took a step forward, and Cassandra scrambled backward, still whimpering. You came here to eliminate a curse, Mira continued, her amber eyes sweeping over the Iron Peak wolves. To destroy what you feared, to silence what you didn't understand. Another step forward, and the silver marks on her fur glowed brighter. But I am no curse. I never was. The misfortunes that befell those who hurt me weren't random accidents. They were my power protecting me the only way it could while the seals held it captive. The Unchained's eyes began to glow brighter, power building around them like a visible aura. The magical wards of Heartwood Haven hummed in response, recognizing their queen, amplifying her presence. You made me your scapegoat, Mira said, her gaze fixing on Drake. You blamed me for every hardship, every setback, every piece of bad luck. You treated me as less than nothing. And then you, Drake Thornfield, rejected the blessing the moon goddess offered you. You chose ambition and pride over destiny and love. Drake shifted then, his body flowing into his alpha form, a large black wolf with steel-gray eyes. He was powerful, impressive, everything an alpha should be. He looked fragile next to Mira. Please, Drake said, and his voice carried genuine fear for the first time. Mercy. I didn't know. I didn't understand. No, Mira agreed. You didn't. You saw only what you wanted to see. A cursed Omega, weak and worthless. Her massive head lowered until her glowing eyes were level with his. But the moon goddess sees hearts, Drake. She knows what lives inside each of us, and she paired us not because we were perfect for each other, but because you needed to learn that power without compassion is tyranny, that strength without wisdom is cruelty. She straightened to her full height again. You have a choice now. You can continue down this path, building your empire on fear and domination, treating those you deem lesser as expendable. Or you can become better. You can learn that true leadership means serving those who follow you, not subjugating them. Drake's wolf lowered its head, unable to maintain eye contact with the blessed light that radiated from Mira. Around him, the Iron Peak wolves shifted uneasily, caught between the alpha they'd followed for years and the undeniable proof of divine power standing before them. As for you, Cassandra Nightshade, Mira said, turning her attention back to the rust-colored wolf still pressed to the ground. You challenged me out of spite and ambition. You thought you could claim what I'd rejected, stand where I'd refused to stand, and prove yourself superior. Cassandra whimpered again. I could destroy you, Mira continued, her voice soft but carrying to every wolf present. I could strip your rank, scatter your family, leave you with nothing. The power is mine to wield. The clearing held its breath. But I won't, Mira said, and her tone gentled, because the Blessed One doesn't rule through fear or revenge. I am not Drake. I am not you. I am the balance, the reminder that power without mercy is meaningless. Her command released, and Cassandra scrambled to her feet. Leave this place. Return to your pack. Remember this moment, and know that cruelty will never triumph over compassion, no matter how strong it believes itself to be. Cassandra shifted back to human form and ran for the trees without looking back, her scent heavy with shame and terror. Mira addressed the rest of the Iron Peak pack. You have 3 minutes to be beyond my territory's borders. Return to your lands. Think carefully about the kind of pack you want to be, one built on fear or one built on respect. The wolves turned and began to retreat, following Cassandra's path back toward Iron Peak territory. But Drake remained, still in wolf form, still standing before the massive white wolf with silver marks. I could have loved you, Drake said quietly, his voice thick with regret. If I'd seen past my own ambition. Maybe, Mira replied gently. Or maybe the goddess knew that we were never meant to love each other. Maybe she paired us so that your rejection would free me to become this. She gestured with her massive head to Heartwood Haven, to the Unchained, to everything she'd built. Maybe some bonds exist not to unite, but to teach. And maybe the lesson you needed was that you don't deserve everything you want simply because you're strong enough to take it. Drake shifted back to human form, vulnerable and exposed before her. He looked up at the towering white wolf, at the glowing silver marks, at the amber eyes that held wisdom far beyond her years. I'm sorry, he said, and the words sounded genuine. For all of it. You deserved better. Yes, Mira agreed. I did, but I also survived. And sometimes survival is its own kind of triumph. Drake bowed his head and turned to leave. He paused at the tree line and looked back one last time at what he'd rejected, at the massive blessed wolf who radiated more power than any Alpha King could ever claim, and bowed low. Then he walked away. The Unchained waited until the sense of the Iron Peak pack had completely faded before they relaxed. Kalen shifted back to human form and approached Mira with undisguised pride in his expression. You handled that perfectly, he said. Mercy without weakness, justice without cruelty, a true blessed one. Mira shifted back to human form, the transformation now as easy as breathing. They'll come back, she said quietly. Drake's pride won't allow this to stand. Then we'll be ready, Sarah said firmly, and next time he'll learn there's a difference between an alpha king and the blessed servant of the goddess. Over the following days, word spread about the confrontation at Heartwood Haven. Within a week, wolves from across the territories began to arrive, not to challenge, but to seek sanctuary. Omegas who'd been treated as less than nothing. Betas tired of watching cruelty disguised as leadership. Even a few alphas who believed in the old ways of balance rather than domination. Heartwood Haven filled with life, with family, with purpose, and Mira discovered that her healing abilities extended beyond physical wounds. She could sense emotional trauma and help wolves work through their pain, could feel when someone was hiding hurt and offer comfort, could project warmth and safety to those who'd never known either. This is what Pack was always meant to be, Finn said one evening as they watched new arrivals being welcomed. Not hierarchy enforced through fear, but community built on care. Mira also discovered something else growing in her heart. Callan had been her protector, her teacher, her anchor through the transformation, but somewhere along the way, he'd become more. The bond forming between them wasn't the fated mate bond, wasn't driven by the moon goddess's decree. It was choice, mutual respect, growing affection, love earned rather than assigned. And it was beautiful. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Mira's parents arrived at the Haven's borders. They came alone, heads bowed, scents heavy with shame and fear. Mira met them in the central clearing, Callan at her side. "We bound your power," her mother said, her voice breaking. "The night you were born, your eyes glowed amber, and the silver marks appeared on your skin. Every alpha in the territory felt your presence and were terrified. They ordered us to suppress your wolf or watch you be killed as a threat. So you chose to imprison me instead," Mira said, keeping her voice neutral. "We thought we were protecting you." Her father protested. "We thought if we kept your power hidden, you could have a normal life, that you'd be safe." "Safe," Mira repeated the word. "I was cast out to die. Rejected in front of hundreds, spent my entire life believing I was cursed, worthless, responsible for every bad thing that happened to those around me." Her amber eyes blazed. That wasn't safety, that was torture. Her parents began to cry, their sense sharp with genuine remorse. "They were weak," her wolf said. "They should have protected what we truly were." "Yes," Mira agreed, "but they're also still our parents." She knelt before them. "I don't forgive you, not yet. What you did caused 23 years of suffering. It nearly destroyed me." They flinched. "But I understand fear. I understand making terrible choices when you feel you have no other option." She placed a hand on each of their heads. "So I offer you this. Stay here. Serve the Haven. Learn what the Blessed One truly represents. Help build something better than what you helped create, and perhaps in time, we can find a path forward." Her parents nodded, tears streaming down their faces. "Thank you," her mother whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Mira replied. "You'll work for this. You'll prove through actions that you're committed to being better. And if you can do that, if you can truly change, then maybe we can be a family again. Someday." The blood moon rose on the spring equinox, exactly 4 months after Mira's rejection. The sky turned crimson as the moon climbed above the horizon and power thrummed through the air. Every wolf in the territories felt it, the sense of destiny aligning, of prophecy reaching completion. Mira stood on the highest platform of Heartwood Haven, surrounded by the Unchained, and looked out at the forest that had once nearly killed her. 4 months ago, she'd been the cursed Omega no one wanted. Now, she was the Blessed One, leader of a growing sanctuary, proof that what others saw as weakness could be transformed into unimaginable strength. "Do you think Drake will try again?" Finn asked, his young voice uncertain. "Probably," Mira replied calmly. "But if he does, he'll face not just me, but everyone who's found sanctuary here. Every Omega he dismissed, every wolf he treated as lesser. And he'll learn that true power doesn't come from domination. It comes from lifting others up." Kalen moved to stand beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. Over the past months, their bond had deepened, not fated by the goddess, but chosen by them. It was gentle and strong and entirely theirs. "Whatever comes," Kalen said quietly, "we face it together." Mira smiled and leaned against his shoulder. "Together," she agreed. The blood moon reached its apex, and Mira felt her wolf rise up, ready and unafraid. She shifted, her white fur glowing in the crimson light, the silver marks blazing like starfire. And she howled, a sound of triumph and hope and unshakable faith that light could exist even in the deepest darkness. The Unchained howled with her, their voices blending in a symphony of power and promise. Far away in the Iron Peak pack, Drake heard that howl and felt his wolf bow in recognition. The cursed Omega he'd rejected had become something he could never have imagined, something he'd never deserve. The Blessed One, the Light-Bearer, the heart that saw all hearts. And she was just beginning. And so Mira's journey from cursed Omega to the Blessed One became a living testament to the truth that others' judgments don't define us. She learned that what's called weakness can become strength, that what's rejected can become precious, and that sometimes the greatest blessings come wrapped in the cruelest betrayals. Her story teaches us that the marks we bear, whether literal or metaphorical, aren't signs of curse, but signs of character. That surviving despite impossible odds is its own kind of power. That found family can heal wounds that blood family created, and that love given freely is always stronger than love demanded. But Mira's tale is far from over. What happens when ancient darkness stirs, drawn by the light she radiates? What price will she pay to protect the sanctuary she's built? And what will it cost her heart when she must choose between mercy and justice? What did you think of Mira's transformation from cursed to blessed? Have you ever been judged unfairly only to prove them wrong? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your stories. If this resonated with you, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because the next chapter of Mira's journey is coming soon. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when the darkness finally rises. Thank you for listening, for being part of this community, and for believing in the power of transformation. We'll see you in the next chapter.